Let me ask you a question. And I want you to be honest with yourself when you answer it. When was the last time you had a truly big idea? Not a safe idea. Not a practical idea. Not the kind of idea you'd feel comfortable sharing at dinner without people quietly exchanging glances. A genuinely enormous idea, the kind that made your heart race a little, the kind that felt almost embarrassing in its ambition. Most people have had that feeling at least once. A flash of something vast. A vision of what their life, their work, their contribution to the world could look like if they stopped playing by the unspoken rules everyone around them seems to follow. And then, almost immediately, the editing begins. That's unrealistic. That's been tried before. Who am I to think I could pull something like that off? I have a mortgage. I have responsibilities. I should be grateful for what I have. And just like that, the big idea gets folded up and tucked away. The dream gets swapped for something more manageable. The life that was possible gets quietly replaced with the life that feels safe. This is not weakness. This is not laziness. This is what happens to almost every human being who grows up in a world that trains us, from childhood, to calibrate our ambitions to fit inside the box we were handed. School rewards the right answer, not the revolutionary question. Workplaces promote those who execute, not those who reimagine. Society, on the whole, is deeply uncomfortable with people who think at a scale that disrupts the existing order. And so we shrink. Not all at once. Gradually. Year by year, the ceiling of what we allow ourselves to want gets lower and lower, until one day we are living entirely inside a life we never consciously chose. A life shaped more by the fears we never examined than by the dreams we never pursued. But here is the thing about fear, it is not evidence. Fear feels like wisdom. It sounds like caution. It dresses itself up in the language of responsibility and maturity. But most of the time, fear is simply the imagination applied to the worst-case scenario instead of the best one. And there are people, rare people, who flip that equation. Who look at the same uncertain world everyone else sees and ask not what could go wrong, but what could go right, and what would it take to make it happen? One of those people grew up as a bullied, lonely kid in South Africa with a head full of books and a mind that refused to accept the world as it was. A person who would go on to build electric cars when the entire automotive industry said it was impossible, launch rockets into space as a private citizen when only governments had done it, and announce, with complete sincerity, that his goal was to make humanity a multiplanetary species. His name is Elon Musk. And whatever you think of him as a person, and there is much to think about, his life is one of the most vivid demonstrations in modern history of what happens when a human being refuses to limit the size of their thinking. Elon Musk was born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971. He was not a golden child. He was not popular, not athletic, not the kind of kid teachers pointed to as a future star. He was awkward. Intensely, almost painfully so. He was bullied so severely in school that a group of boys once threw him down a flight of stairs and beat him unconscious. He was hospitalized. He described his childhood as genuinely miserable. What he had, instead of popularity or social ease, was an obsessive relationship with ideas. He read encyclopedias for fun. He finished the entire Encyclopedia Britannica as a young boy. By age 12, he had taught himself to code and sold his first software, a simple space-themed video game called Blaster, for $500. Notice that. 12 years old? No teacher assigned this. No parent pushed him to it. He simply had an idea and figured out how to build it. He consumed science fiction the way other children consume television. Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, Douglas Adams. These weren't escapist fantasies to young Elon, they were blueprints. Possibilities. Maps of what humanity could become. His parents divorced when he was 9. He chose to live with his father, a decision he would later describe as a mistake. His relationship with his father was difficult, and by his own account, deeply damaging. There was no warm, stable foundation beneath him. And yet, the thinking never stopped. At 17, Musk made his first genuinely bold move. He left South Africa. Not for any specific opportunity, but for the simple reason that he believed the biggest things were happening elsewhere, and he needed to be near them. He moved first to Canada, then made his way to the United States, to the place that in the 1990s was becoming the center of the technological universe, Silicon Valley. He arrived without wealth, without connections, without certainty. He held odd jobs. He studied at Queen's University in Canada and later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, where he completed degrees in economics and physics. He was accepted to a PhD program at Stanford. He attended for 2 days. Then he dropped out. Because in 1995, the internet was exploding, and Elon Musk was not the kind of person who could sit in a seminar room when history was being made outside. With his brother Kimball, Musk founded Zip2, a software company that provided online city guides to newspapers. They worked out of a tiny office, slept on the floor, showered at the YMCA. 4 years later, Compaq acquired the company for over $300 million. Musk's share, $22 million. Most people, at that point, would have stopped. $22 million is not a problem that requires more risk-taking to solve. Musk immediately poured most of it into his next venture. He founded X.com, an online financial services company. It would eventually merge with a competitor and become something you may have heard of, PayPal. When eBay acquired PayPal in 2002, Musk walked away with approximately $180 million. Again, most people stop here. This is the part of the movie where the hero retires to a beautiful house on the coast and appears in occasional magazine interviews about innovation. Musk was 30 years old. He was just getting started. What Elon Musk did next is, by any rational measure of risk assessment, completely insane. He founded 3 companies, nearly simultaneously, each attacking a problem so enormous that most experts considered them essentially unsolvable by a private individual. SpaceX, to revolutionize space transportation and ultimately colonize Mars. Founded in 2002. Budget, $100 million of his own money. Tesla, to accelerate the world's transition to electric vehicles. Joined as chairman in 2004. Personal investment, $70 million. Solar City, to transform how the world generates energy. Co-founded with his cousins. Another significant personal investment. Between 2007 and 2010, all 3 companies nearly went bankrupt simultaneously. SpaceX's first 3 rocket launches failed. The Falcon 1 rocket, the one Musk had bet everything on, exploded on the launch pad. Then again. Each failure cost millions. After the 3rd failure, morale inside the company was devastated. Engineers who had given everything to this project sat in stunned silence. The 4th launch, funded by what little money remained, either worked or Musk was done. It worked. The Falcon 1 became the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket to reach orbit. Shortly after, NASA awarded SpaceX a contract worth $1.6 billion. At Tesla, the situation was equally dire. The company was burning cash faster than it could raise it. The 2008 financial crisis made everything worse. Musk poured his last reserves into the company, money he later admitted he had to borrow from friends just to pay his rent. He described the period in a 2014 interview, his voice breaking. "I thought we would fail. I thought SpaceX would fail. I thought Tesla would fail. And I never said that publicly, because you have to be willing to push through, but privately, I was terrified." He invested his last dollar rather than let the company collapse. Tesla survived. And then it didn't just survive, it changed the world. So what drives a person to take these kinds of risks? What rules govern a mind like this? Because these are not the actions of someone who is reckless or foolish. They are the actions of someone who thinks, very differently, about risk, about purpose, and about what a single human life is for. Principle 1. Reason from first principles, not from analogy. This is Musk's most celebrated intellectual habit, and it is worth spending time on. Most people, when they approach a problem, think by analogy. They look at how things have been done before and make incremental adjustments. This is reasonable and efficient, for most problems. But it makes genuine innovation nearly impossible, because you are always constrained by the boundaries of the existing solution. Musk thinks differently. He breaks every problem down to its most fundamental physical truths, the irreducible facts, and then builds back up from there. When he wanted to build rockets, experts told him, rockets cost $250 million. That's just what they cost. That's the industry price. Musk asked, what are rockets actually made of? What is the raw material cost of carbon fiber, aluminum, titanium, copper, electronics? The answer? About 2% of the retail price. The rest was industry inefficiency, legacy processes, and lack of competition. So he decided to build his own rockets, from scratch, at a fraction of the cost. This is how he thinks about everything. Not what does it cost, but what should it cost if we approached it from the ground up. He put it this way: I think it's important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. The normal way we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. But when you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach. What are the most fundamental truths, and can we build our reasoning from that? What would happen if you applied this to your own life? To your career, your relationships, your goals? Instead of asking what is the normal thing to do here? What if you asked what is actually true, and what should I build from that truth? Principle 2. Make the mission bigger than the money. Musk has said repeatedly that money is not his motivator. This sounds like the kind of thing rich people say to sound noble, except that his behavior consistently bears it out. At multiple points in his career, he could have cashed out, protected his wealth, and lived in extraordinary comfort for the rest of his life. Instead, he reinvested, risked, and bet everything on outcomes that would benefit not just himself but, in his view, all of humanity. His stated purpose for SpaceX is not to build a profitable rocket company. It is to ensure the survival of human consciousness beyond Earth, to make life multiplanetary so that a single catastrophic event cannot end everything humanity has ever created. You can debate whether that goal is realistic. But you cannot debate the power of having a mission at that scale. It transforms every setback from a defeat into a temporary obstacle on the way to something that matters enormously. He said, when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. What is important enough to you? And are you letting the odds stop you from doing it? Principle 3. Redefine your relationship with failure. Musk watched his rockets explode. He sat through Tesla production lines that missed every target. He has been publicly ridiculed, called a fraud, had his mental health questioned, been the subject of regulatory investigations, and watched his company's stock prices crater in ways that would have destroyed a lesser person's will to continue. His response is not to minimize failure. It is to reframe it. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. This is not a motivational poster quote. This is a design philosophy. SpaceX deliberately builds tests designed to push hardware to the point of failure, because only then do you know where the true limits are. You don't learn from a test that goes perfectly. You learn from the explosion. The question is not, how do I avoid failing? The question is, how do I make my failures cheap enough, fast enough, and informative enough that I can learn from them and try again? Principle 4. Compress time. Urgency is a strategy. Musk sets deadlines that his own engineers routinely describe as impossible. Production targets at Tesla. Launch schedules at SpaceX. Product timelines at his other ventures. He is famous, or infamous, for what insiders call Elon time, the gap between when he says something will happen and when it actually does. And yet, there is method in this. When you set an audacious deadline, one of two things happens: either you hit it, or you miss it and land somewhere dramatically further along than you would have if you'd set a comfortable timeline. The first step is to establish that something is possible, then probability will occur. Small thinking moves slowly because it sees no urgency. Big thinking creates urgency, because the mission is large enough, important enough, consequential enough that delay has a real cost. Principle 5. Tolerate the discomfort of being misunderstood. When Musk said he was going to build electric cars and compete with the established automotive industry, he was mocked. When he said he was going to build reusable rockets and land them back on their launch pads, something that had never been done, aerospace engineers publicly called the idea delusional. In 2015, SpaceX landed the Falcon 9 booster for the first time. The engineers in the control room erupted. The skeptics went quiet. Big thinking will almost always look like delusion before it looks like vision. The time between announcing an audacious goal and achieving it is a period when the world is actively telling you that you're wrong. You have to be willing to live in that space, to keep building while people are questioning your sanity. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. Let the record stand on its own. Tesla did not just build electric cars. It forced every major automotive manufacturer on Earth to pivot their entire product strategy toward electrification. An industry that had resisted change for a century changed because one company made it undeniable. SpaceX did not just launch rockets, it reduced the cost of sending a kilogram to orbit by a factor of 10, reopened the commercial space industry, and signed contracts with NASA to return American astronauts to the International Space Station after a nearly decade-long gap. It has since launched more rockets per year than any space agency on Earth. The Starlink network is building a global satellite internet constellation designed to bring connectivity to every corner of the planet, including places that traditional infrastructure will never reach. These are not personal achievements in the ordinary sense. These are civilizational shifts, and they came from a person who, at several points, had nothing but the idea and the refusal to stop. Now I want to speak to you directly. You probably don't want to colonize Mars. You probably don't want to build a rocket company or reinvent the automotive industry. That's perfectly fine. The lesson of Elon Musk's life is not that you should want what he wants. The lesson is about scale of thinking. It's about the permission you give yourself to imagine something genuinely large, and then the courage to move toward it, even when the odds look terrible and the voices around you are full of doubt. Your big idea might be a business that serves your community. It might be a piece of art that nobody has made yet. It might be a career change that terrifies you, a conversation you've been postponing, a life you've been designing in your head for years but have never begun to build. The principle is the same. The enemy is the same, the small, safe, reasonable voice that tells you to wait until conditions are perfect, until you're more prepared, until the risk feels smaller. Conditions will never be perfect. You will never feel fully prepared. The risk will not get smaller, only your tolerance for it will grow, and only if you exercise it. Musk bet his last dollar on the belief that a privately built rocket could reach orbit. He was wrong twice. He was wrong 3 times. He was right on the 4th attempt, and changed everything. What if you allowed yourself 4 attempts? What if you stopped treating your first failure as the final verdict? I would rather be optimistic and wrong than pessimistic and right. That is the posture. That is the orientation. Optimistic. Forward-leaning. Willing to be wrong in the service of eventually being spectacularly right. The world does not need more people who are good at being careful. The world has plenty of careful people. What the world needs, what your life needs, are people who are willing to think bigger than they've been told to, risk more than feels comfortable, and build something the world hasn't seen yet. You have the idea. You've had it for a while. The only question left is, when do you begin? When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. Start now. Think bigger. Risk something real. The stars don't care about your excuses.